Ahuitzotl, the fierce, expansionist emperor of the Aztecs. He ruled like a god over his subjects, and he crushed anyone who dared defy him. This was the mighty Ahuitzotl, the most ruthless emperor of the Aztecs. Welcome to my channel. And today we explore the life and legacy of the fierce expansionist emperor of the Aztecs, Ahuitzotl. Who was Ahuitzotl? Ahuitzotl was the 8th tlatoani, also translated as Emperor of the Aztec Empire. He reigned from 1486 to 1502, a period marking the peak military expansion of the Aztec state. His empire stretched from the Gulf Coast of what is now Mexico to the modern-day Guatemalan border. At the time, the Maya were at the height of their power and influence. His conquests brought wealth and power to the Aztec Empire, but they also brought new challenges. He was known for his intelligence and ability to get things done, and he used these skills to benefit not just the Aztec Empire, but all of the people who lived within its borders. However, that doesn't mean that he wasn't feared. Water was diverted from Lake Texcoco and Lake Chalco through a system of canals and aqueducts to supply the city with fresh water. One day, the said conduit burst and made such a breach that if it had not been stopped, the whole city would have been demolished. And he also founded a hospital to take care of the sick and injured. The water came out with such a rush that it killed some Indians who were caught by surprise. His successor, Moctezuma II, was a weak ruler who was easily manipulated by the Spanish. As a result, the Aztec Empire was conquered and destroyed within just a few decades. In the centuries since then, Ahuitzotl has been both revered and reviled. He's remembered as one of the most ruthless Aztec rulers, but also as one of the most effective. The campaigns of conquest that he led brought wealth and power to the Aztec Empire, and his policies helped to integrate the conquered peoples into the empire. The flood was a major setback for the city, and it took years for it to recover. Did you know that the Ahuitzotl, a mythical, water-dwelling creature, was his namesake? The very name given to the young prince from birth symbolized both terror and power. Want more on Aztec warfare or the Templo Mayor sacrifices? But despite this tragedy, Ahuitzotl continued to work on improving the lives of his people. While this was a major engineering accomplishment, it proved to be a fatal flaw in Ahuitzotl's legacy. One of the canals broke and flooded the city. It was a natural disaster that killed hundreds and damaged many of the city's buildings and infrastructure. Historians debate whether he was a great leader who expanded his empire and improved the lives of his people, or a brutal conqueror who was responsible for the deaths of thousands. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. There's no denying that Ahuitzotl was a powerful and effective ruler. He expanded his empire farther than any ruler before him. He made the city of Tenochtitlan one of the most prosperous and culturally rich cities in the New World, and he implemented policies that integrated the conquered peoples into the Aztec way of life. At the same time, he was also responsible for some of the most horrific acts of violence in Aztec history. The Templo Mayor ceremony, in particular, was a dark stain on his legacy. Ahuitzotl was a firm believer in the Aztec religion, and he was not afraid to use violence to enforce its tenets. Human sacrifice was an important part of this religion, and Ahuitzotl was responsible for the deaths of thousands of people who were sacrificed to the gods. Now that he ruled over such a vast territory, Ahuitzotl needed to find ways to keep his empire together. The temple was dedicated to the gods of war and the dead, and it was fitting that the ceremony should be as bloody as possible. According to the Spanish chronicler Bernardino de Sahagin, the Aztec took 20,000 captives to the temple and sacrificed them all. This number is almost certainly exaggerated, but there's no doubt that many people died there during the ceremony. For the Aztec, this was a necessary evil. They believed that the gods required human blood in order to stay happy, and they were willing to do whatever it took to keep the gods on their side. For the conquered peoples, it was a brutal reminder of the price of disobedience. To achieve this, he implemented a series of policies designed to integrate the conquered peoples into the Aztec way of life. He encouraged intermarriage between the conquerors and the conquered, and he also appointed many of the conquered rulers to positions of power in his government. In addition, he built roads and infrastructure projects throughout his empire to help connect the various regions together. Their cities were centers of trade and culture, and their rulers were considered divine. However, the Aztec army was too much for the Maya to handle, and one by one, their cities fell to the invaders. Its two partners, Texcoco and Tlacopan, were looking to dissolve the alliance and pursue their own interests. However, Ahuitzotl had other plans. He reasserted the authority of the empire, crushing rebellions and reasserting central authority. His first year in power was spent putting down rebellions in the south and southwest, as well as securing the borders against nomadic tribes from the north. However, this great ruler was known for his brutality and thirst for human blood. To appease his gods, he waged war on neighboring states, subjugating them and forcing them to pay tribute. But despite the terror he inspired, he's also remembered for solidifying the Aztec Triple Alliance with Texcoco and Tlacopan. By the time of his death, he left behind an empire that spanned over 100,000 square miles and produced over 30 million subjects. Military conquests. Ahuitzotl was perhaps the greatest warrior that the Aztec had ever produced. In 1492, he led an expedition into the Mixtec region, which was home to several independent city-states. Despite fierce resistance, Ahuitzotl managed to subdue the Mixtec kings and force them to pay tribute. He then turned his attention to the Zapotec region, where he faced even fiercer opposition. The Zapotec warriors were renowned for their ferocity and skill in battle, but they too eventually fell to Ahuitzotli's superior tactics and relentless pursuit of victory. Early life and rise to power. When Ahuitzotl came to power, the Triple Alliance was shaky at best. Once he secured the safety of his empire, Ahuitzotl embarked on a series of military campaigns that would make him a legend in Mesoamerican history. With the Mixtec and Zapotec regions under his control, Ahuitzotl set his sights on the Maya. In total, Ahuitzotli's military campaigns covered an area larger than any ruler before him. While it may seem paradoxical to call someone a benevolent conqueror, Ahuitzotl did his best to rule with fairness and justice. Perhaps the most infamous example of this was the ceremony that he oversaw in 1487, when the Aztec completed the grand reconstruction of their main temple. The Templo Mayor, another major construction project that Ahuitzotl oversaw, was the building of aqueducts and canals to bring fresh water into the city of Tenochtitlan. The Spanish chronicler Antonio de Herrera y Tordesillas wrote of it. In the middle of the city there was a conduit, or rather a large pipe made of clay, which conducted water from the said lake into the city. He established a school to teach the children of the empire's elite class about Aztec history and culture. Death and Was Ahuitzotl died in 1502, possibly from injuries sustained while battling the scintilla, or from a sickness contracted during his wars of conquest. When Ahuitzotl stepped down as emperor, he left behind a vast and unstable empire that would soon be challenged by the Spanish conquistadors. What do you think of Ahuitzotl? Let us know in the comments.